All right, hey everyone. Today I'm gonna talk about photobashing and a couple of different techniques that I use uh, pretty much whenever I was working with this type of workflow. So I'm gonna just take a few different images and try to show you guys the different things that you would commonly use every day when you're working with this type of stuff. So I'm gonna start with this as a plate, and basically a plate is the image that you're gonna use as a base. Uh, so my idea here is I want to have like a little dude standing on top of this, looking out over some sort of vista. Um, and yeah, so we're gonna first thing I want to do here is remove the sky from the foreground here. And in order to do that, let me erase these out and reset the image. I'm gonna duplicate this image by doing Control J, so I'd have it away from the locked version. Okay, and I'm going to go into channels, and we're going to do so let me first say that there's the quick version of this, which is you can hit W and do like the quick selection tool, and like you can just select this, and that in a lot of people's cases might be good enough, right? If you just need something quick, that does a pretty decent job. But if you don't and you want something more precise, the way that we would do this is through the channels. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click through the different channels, and you're going to see how it provides like a very different image, like value structure based on the channel, right? So what I'm actually looking for is the blue channel, because we want the most amount of value separation between the object that we're trying to get and the stuff that we don't. So this one has the best separation between the ground and the sky. So I'm going to duplicate this by right-clicking, duplicate channel, hit OK. And then I'm going to turn on that layer and turn off my original. It's important that you don't do this on the original channels, because that's going to mess with your image. So with the blue copy, I'm going to hit levels by doing Control L and this around to get basically a 2-value image, okay, where the black is what I want to select and the white is what I don't want to select. So if you move these around, you'll be able to see this come together. And we have a lot more of a refined selection now. So if I hit OK and then do Control and left click on this, it's going to select all of the white in this image, right? So you can see that's selected now. But what I want is actually the black. So if I do Control Shift and I, that's going to invert my selection to select the black. I'm going to go back to my RGB channel and then go back to the layers. And I'm going to hit Control C and Control V, and that's going to put that onto a new layer. So if I hold Alt and left click, that'll isolate this so we can get a better view of what our mask looks like. So now we have a lot of high fidelity detail here. So now that I have this, I want to stretch this out and put this kind of like on a third, right? And I'm going to go and look at the rest of these images that I have brought out here and see if these work. Now, I brought this one. I think this one is something that I want to work with. I like the shape of this thing here, and it roughly fits with the so another note to mention here is that these are all from the same reference photos, right? So like if you look here and you look here, it's the sky and all that is roughly the same, so it makes it a lot easier to work with this. So I'm going to select this. I'll even add, I'll just actually bring in the entire thing, because what I'm going to probably end up doing is masking things in and out. So I'm going to set this behind my layer, okay, and set this over here. And now you can see like the sky is, matching well enough. We can fix that in post and like move these things over. So I can duplicate this again, or I can just hit W and select the sky, Command C, Command V, put that behind that layer, and then scoot this over. And then what I can do is with my pen, hit the eraser and start to blend this kind of together, right? And we'll have to match the bottom part here as well. Now, the good thing about our base plate is that there's no real perspective cues here because of it just being landscape, right? There's no hard perspective cues that we can go off of. So we can do stuff like this and move the horizon line up and down as we want, which is good. So the next thing that I want to do will be blend this together and then find a foreground element. So for the foreground, let's see. You can maybe see if I can this in here. And when I'm trying to see if stuff will just work, I'm gonna quickly just mask things together, like just Control C, Control V, and then if I feel like I need a proper mask, then I'll go back if I have to. So for this, something like this, I can just do the magic wand and then kind of as needed. I don't feel like it has to be super precise because the blend is pretty soft, right? So I'm gonna command Control X and then Control V, put that on a new layer and just turn it off for later if I need it. And then now I have, if I control click something too, like it'll go to that layer. So control clicking this, I can see this here. So I like this blending of layers here, getting this bit of foreground mixing, or like basically a transitionary piece between this foreground and that background. So I kind of want to keep that there and then erase out certain things. So here, I feel like I can erase this, blend that a little bit better. Okay. And then I still feel like I want something here that like swoops up. So let's see. I feel like I have something I can use. Let's see. To here and pull this in, or pull this. So with this, I'll do the same thing. The channels, blue channel, duplicate. Okay, and you can see like once you learn how to do this, it becomes very quick in terms of something like that, especially separating something from the sky. That's going to be very, very easy to do. And then you can go through and use a brush, just select black, use a hard brush, and then just fill in things like this, little artifacts if you need to. Okay, not super important that I get it perfect. Control click, invert the selection, go back, Command C, Command V, boom. Let's pull this into our main document now. And get this blending in a way that goes back. So you may notice something here. I'm gonna this and then stretch it a bit. So you'll notice something here. There's like this fringe. Now, one thing we can do to try to remove this is we can alpha lock this and then like select maybe with a mixer brush, select this color here and try to just fill this in. If you're not worried about like the technical, what's like the information there, if you're being kind of rough and dirty, that's one way to do it. Or if you're being more precise, you could just do like something this where we control click it, which is going to select the edge, right? That's going to select everything. And then if you go to select, modify, and then contract, and you can contract it by 1 pixel, right? So that moved the selection in, right? And if you had that white fringe, that's gonna, and then if you invert the selection, right? That's gonna remove everything on the outside of that. You see how that worked? That's another way to do it too. But for now, I'll just keep this as is. And then what I'm going to do is do a curves adjustment layer, clip it by holding Alt and clicking there. And then darkening this. Now I want to move on to this section here. I'm going to start by just doing a mask and doing a soft brush and painting out the sky in certain areas just to match it with what's in the back, because I think that that's going to get us pretty close to what we need. I'm seeing the blend here is needing to be cleaned up. Okay. It's already looking pretty good. Now, let's say I want to uh, lighten up this stuff back here or add fog, for example. So like between this layer and here, maybe I want to add a layer of fog. So here, what I can do is just select a brush and try to paint out if I feel like it's too strong. So like I'll go strong to begin with and then remove as needed. And then if I feel like it's too bright, can darken it. Another thing too, which I feel like I'm gonna have to do, is go into here, select this roughly, okay, and C, and then Command V that onto its own layer, and then I'm gonna do a curves adjustment, clip that into it, and as well. I think I don't need that one there, but I might need it somewhere over here. Again, going strong, erasing out as it. Next, I have a photo of a knight that I had purchased a long time ago, and now he's already removed from the background, so that's already an advantage. So I'm just going to place him in, and we're going to have to adjust his values and things to match the concept. So in here, I want to try and match the black values. So what I need to do is just take him and do a curves adjustment with that. That's going to be like a common theme if you're working with photos, is curves adjustments. You'll probably notice that. And then I want to lift the blacks a little bit. Okay, we can put there. And then this, I wanted to add something over here. And focal point. So let's see. Potentially like a castle would be something to put over there. So if I can find something like that. But before that, I'll just get rid of all this stuff. First, clean up things. Okay, but let's take a little bit of a second to look at what we have and what things need to be adjusted or changed. I want to maybe add in a more interesting sky, and then add in like a focal point, like some sort of castle over here. So I'm gonna go find some of those photos real quick, and then we'll continue. So I went ahead and found some reference images that we could potentially use here. So again, we're going to go into channels and try and isolate this out. Again, beating the same drum with the process, right? Like a lot of photo bashing is repeating things over and over again, unfortunately. But that's kind of the way it goes. Okay, so if I select this, do that. Okay, and I can refine as needed later. something like this. What I'm probably going to end up doing is erasing out most. The next thing we need to do is adjust this for this here. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. We could add in a bunch of different adjustment layers, but the easiest thing to do would be actually to take this. I'm going to duplicate it and then merge, and then just select something in here that has a good value range, right? I want some good darks, I want a highlight, and I want a mid-tone. And just Command C, Command V. And this is going to act kind of as like a palette, right? Go to here, and remember that layer 12 is our palette. If I hit image adjustments match color, which I have key bound to F3 for ease of use, go to our source file and then go to layer 12. You're going to notice that it tries to match the color here. Now, it didn't get it perfect, but we need to fade the information out. Okay, so get kind of like a middle ground, and we can adjust the brightness too. Oftentimes, if I feel like it's not working the way I intended, I'll reduce the amount more and then add in what I want it to be with like adjustment layers. So I'm going to lean towards less influence with this. Okay. So thing that I notice immediately is the value here versus the value here, the darkest is too dark. So I'm going to match that. I'm going to do a new layer, clip it here, do a lighten, and select probably something like this. Just pick a brush and try to get those to match a little bit better. And you'll notice that it kills a lot of information when you do that. So I'm going to, you can either remove the opacity or you can do Control U and then increase the bright or decrease the brightness, and that's going to bring some of that detail back. Okay. I think that works well enough. Okay. The next thing is the sky. Okay. So I brought in like a really dramatic sky from another reference photo. And we're going to see if we can get something in here to work with what we're doing. Okay. Go somewhere in here. I want just certain information here. Okay. Now I just want this color mainly. So I'm going to double click this. Over and this layer, I want to remove the dark information. Okay, so if you see that, if I move this over, it's starting to remove out the dark, right? And subsequently, you can have the underlying layer come through as well. But I find that using the adjustment on this layer is a little bit easier to understand sometimes. So next, if you hit Alt and then click, it's going to separate these two so you can fade things out. And that's kind of what I'm looking for here. Increase this. So the reason I did this is so that this guy gets kind of highlighted here. And then we can like remove out any unnecessary artifacting to kind of better craft the shape that we want. Then if we want, we can play around with the saturation and stuff. But that's working well enough. So this is our final image right now. I went ahead and did a couple more changes. I worked on it for about 20 more minutes after the end of the demo here. And this is what I ended up with. Now, I want to go over some of the changes that I did to this image in comparison to where we left off, because I think that there's a couple of important compositional changes and decisions that I made in the end, but also a few techniques that I can cover as well. So I added the mountain in the back because I felt that it helped frame the composition a little bit better. It also gave it a little bit more, I guess like depth would be the right word. There is a good amount of depth in here, but I felt that it's just like a different sense, right? Like it feels vast, whereas this one feels. I just like the feeling of this one more in terms of, you know, we get a good amount of depth into the mid ground here, and then there's like this whole other like vast mountain in the back, which I think is just more appealing for me. This one thing to note too as well is that with this plate, it came with the sky already in it. Mood that the sky was giving me also worked with what I was trying to achieve in the final. So that's another thing to note. Another thing I did here was I added in like a light source to help boost the value contrast here in the foreground, or in versus in here. I felt that it wasn't as prominent. So you can see that I also scaled up the building like quite a bit, so that the focal point is from like a very small thumbnail view is very obvious, because like if we put the original back, it's not as interesting. You notice as well, I color graded it to be more cool, so that that like cool atmosphere contrasts very well with like the warm lighting that's coming through into the focal point. Next, I can talk about a couple of post-process things that I did here. These are very subtle things, but like this layer here, I did a lens blur to blur out things that are not in the foreground, right? So like, or not in the focal point. So things off to the sides here, I blurred, and that's to like mimic the effect of like what your eyes do, because like if you're looking at something, everything else that's to the peripherals of your vision, it gets blurred out. I added chromatic aberration as well, and then layer here, which is where we're getting a lot of the cool information. It's a difference layer set to opacity of 3. I bump this back up, you'll see what this does. So you can play around with the color that you use here depending on the effect you're trying to get. Right? If you want something warmer, you can use this color, etc. And then you just drop down the opacity very, very low. And that's just your image subtly. In a gradient so that the bottom doesn't pull attraction or doesn't pull focus. Let's see. Color lookup, that's again to help with that transition of like the cool values. And I this area here because I wanted that to be warm. If we do that, you can see how that affects it. So I masked that out so that this is a lot brighter, a lot warmer. There, which I don't think is actually doing anything. Let's see. What I do is, let me see, check out this. So I added in a foreground path here. So if I take out this foreground path, what I did was just basically took another photo from that same set and brought in a path so that there's like a, it's kind of cheesy, right? But it's basically just a line that comes into the composition. Okay, now we have the here. This is to help the composition not waver off the painting to the left, so that darker cloud bring the viewer back into the space where we want them to sit, right? Because if we do this, there's just too much visual noise going on here. It's gonna be distracting. So simplifying that down and making it a dark value helps with that. So the next thing here is these clouds that I have. The way that I got these was by doing the same technique of making like this. What I did was I double clicked this. I double clicked the layer, and then I went to the transparency, and I did that technique where I was going back and forth with the transparency of the image to get this to read. That way I could get the values and the edge I think with clouds, right, the hardest thing to get is like a natural edge, especially if you're doing photorealistic stuff. So that's probably the easiest way to do it. So I just did that, and then I duplicated it a couple of times to get a more thick like opacity to it. And then I duplicated that and put it behind this layer as well to help add in like another layer of fog. And just to reduce some of the contrast in this area as well to help push that back. And a lot of fog, right? This is all just doing the same thing. We have our castle, which we've gone over, the new sky, and I think that's about it, right? So in the end, this is what we started with. We started with just a simple rock on a hill, and we were able to take that and transform it into a pretty quick concept sketch where we basically took a bunch of different plate photos and were able to mishmash them together in order to get something cohesive. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, thanks.